Sam had been a diplomat for 23 years. He had seen many things in his time serving humanity among the stars. He had attended hundreds of meetings on dozens of space stations. He had shaken hands with creatures that had no hands. He had smiled at beings that did not understand smiling. But nothing had prepared him for what he would discover on the station called Prime. The station floated in the darkness between two dying stars. It was old and enormous, built by a species that no longer existed. Now it served as a meeting place for the Galactic Concord, a loose alliance of spacefaring civilizations. Humanity had joined 300 years ago after crawling out of the ashes of the collapse wars. In those days, Earth had been broken. Billions had died. The survivors had looked up at the stars and wondered if anyone out there cared. Sam walked through the crowded halls of the station. Representatives from 100 species moved around him. Some floated, some crawled, some walked on legs that numbered more than he could count. The air smelled strange, a mixture of chemicals designed to keep everyone alive. Sam was used to it by now. The summit was boring. It was always boring. The elder races talked about trade agreements and territorial boundaries. They discussed things that had been discussed for thousands of years. Humanity sat at the back of the room, as always. The young species, the newcomers, the ones who had barely learned to travel between stars. Sam excused himself during a long speech about mining rights. He needed air. He needed space. He walked down a quiet corridor and found himself in a section of the station he had never visited before. That was when he saw them. They sat in a small room with no door. There were 5 of them, gathered around a table that was too big for their small bodies. They looked like insects if insects were the size of children and had 4 arms instead of 6 legs. Their shells were a dull brown color, cracked in places. Their eyes, large and dark, watched Sam as he stopped in the doorway. He recognized them. The Eye. He had read about them in old files. Once they had been a prosperous species with a beautiful, then their sun had grown unstable. Radiation had poisoned their planet. Now they were refugees, scattered across the galaxy, living on borrowed stations and forgotten moons. There were fewer than 800,000 of them left. Nobody talked about the Eye anymore. Nobody cared. Sam raised his hand in greeting. The Eye looked at each other. One of them, older than the rest, with deep cracks in her shell, made a small sound that his translator turned into words. "Human," she said, "you are the first to speak to us in 3 days." Sam felt something twist in his chest. 3 days. They had been sitting here for 3 days, and not a single representative from any species had acknowledged them. "I am Sam," he said, "ambassador from Earth. May I sit with you?" The old Eye gestured to an empty seat. Sam sat down. The chair was too small, but he did not complain. "I am N," the old one said, "elder of the Eye delegation. We came to ask the Conquered for help. Our refugee stations are failing. We have nowhere to go, but no one will hear us." Sam listened. He asked questions. He learned that the Eye had been petitioning the Conquered for years. Every time they were ignored. The elder races saw them as a burden, a dying species with nothing to offer. Why waste resources on beings who would soon be gone? The conversation lasted 2 hours. When it ended, Sam stood to leave, but something stopped him, a question that had been forming in his mind. "And," he said, "I have studied the history of many species, but I know very little about the Eye. Were your people ever connected to humanity in the old days?" The elder's dark eyes seemed to grow larger. She was silent for a long moment. The other eyes shifted in their seats. "You do not know," and said, "It was not a question." "Know what?" The elder made a sound that might have been a sigh. She reached into a pouch on her belt and pulled out a small device. She pressed a button, and a hologram appeared above the table. It showed ships, old ships with strange designs. They were carrying cargo containers marked with symbols Sam did not recognize. 300 years ago, and said, "Your species was dying. The collapse wars had destroyed your food supplies. Your colonies were starving. Millions of humans were weeks away from death. Sam nodded slowly. Every human child learned about those dark years. The elder races did nothing and continued. They watched and waited. Some even hoped humanity would disappear, one less competitor for resources. She paused. But my people could not watch children starve. We could not stand by while innocents suffered. Sam's heart began to beat faster. He stared at the hologram. The eye diverted 30% of our agricultural output and said, "For 5 years we sent food to your colonies. We emptied our reserves. We gave until we had almost nothing left." Sam could not speak. His mouth opened, but no words came. "We never told anyone," the elder said. "We did not want praise or payment. We helped because it was right, because your children deserve to live." She turned off the hologram. "When our own disaster came, we hoped someone would remember, but memory is short among the stars, and the eye are easy to forget." Sam sat back down. His legs would not hold him. He thought about his grandmother who had survived the collapse wars. She had told him stories about mysterious ships that brought food when all hope was lost. She had called them angels. They were not angels, they were the eye. "Why did you never tell us?" Sam whispered. "We did not help you to create a debt," and said. "We helped you because kindness does not need a reason." Sam looked at the small beings around the table. They were tired. They were dying. They had saved humanity and asked for nothing. And now they sat alone in a forgotten room while the galaxy pretended they did not exist. Something changed inside Sam in that moment. Something hard and bright and unbreakable. He stood up. He pulled out his communication device. He connected to the emergency channel that reached every human government, every colony, every station in the galaxy. "This is Ambassador Sam," he said. "I need to speak to everyone, right now. I have just learned something that every human needs to hear." And then he told them the truth about who had saved them 300 years ago. Within hours, the message had reached every corner of human space, and humanity began to remember. The message spread like fire across human space. It moved from Earth to Mars, from Mars to the outer colonies, from the colonies to the deep stations that floated in the black between stars. Within 12 hours, every human who could hear a broadcast knew the name I. On Earth, in a small office at the University of New Chicago, a historian named Vance stared at her screen. She had been studying the collapse wars for 15 years. She thought she knew everything about that terrible time. She was wrong. Began to dig. She searched through archives that had not been opened in centuries. She found records buried under layers of forgotten data, and slowly, piece by piece, she uncovered the truth. The eye had not just sent food. They had sent medicine. They had sent seeds for crops that could grow in poisoned soil. They had sent engineers who taught humans how to rebuild water systems. All of it done quietly. All of it done without asking for credit. Found letters. Handwritten letters from human colony administrators thanking anonymous cargo captains for deliveries that had saved entire cities. The captains never signed their names. They never asked for payment. They simply delivered their cargo and disappeared into the darkness. One letter made cry. It was from a woman named Grace, written on a colony called Haven's Rest. Grace had been 8 years old when the food ships came. She wrote about watching her mother weep with joy as bags of grain were unloaded from a strange vessel. She wrote about the tall, insect-like beings who handed out blankets to children. She wrote about one of them pressing a piece of fruit into her hand and making a sound that she somehow understood as, "Be well, little one." Published everything she found, the archives, the letters, the logistics data showing exactly how much food had been sent, exactly how many lives had been saved. The numbers were staggering. Without the eye, at least 40 million humans would have died, probably more. The reaction was immediate. News stations ran the story on every channel. People gathered in public squares to watch the broadcasts. Many wept. Many felt something they had never felt before, a debt so deep it could not be measured in money or goods. And then came the second piece of news, the news that changed everything. Ambassador Sam had learned that the Galactic Concord had made a decision about the refugee stations. The stations were old. They needed repairs that cost more than the could afford. The Concord had declared them economically non-viable. The had 90 days to relocate. But there was nowhere to go. Every habitable world was claimed. Every station was full. The elder races had closed their doors. The would have to scatter, find whatever corners they could in a galaxy that did not want them. Within a generation, they would be absorbed into other cultures. Their language would be forgotten. Their history would fade. The would exist only in archives. Sam met with him again. This time they sat in his quarters on Prime. The old elder looked even more tired than before. Her shell had developed new cracks. Her voice was softer. "We have accepted our fate," she said. "Every species has an ending. Perhaps this is ours." "No," Sam said. The word came out harder than he intended, and looked at him with those large, dark eyes. "You cannot change the will of the conquered, ambassador. The elder races have decided. The are not worth saving." Sam leaned forward. His hands were shaking. He did not know if it was anger or something else. "The elder races decided that humanity was not worth saving either," he said. 300 years ago, they watched us starve. They waited for us to disappear. But your people did not accept that. Your people chose differently." The elder was silent. "You gave us everything when you had nothing to gain," Sam continued. "You saved our children when the galaxy turned away, and you never asked for anything in return." He paused. "Do you really think we would forget that?" "It was 300 years ago," and said quietly. "Generations have passed. Your people have their own problems. Why would you remember kindness given so long ago?" Sam smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of a man who had just discovered what he was willing to fight for. "Because we are human," he said, "and humans remember. It is one of the few things we are good at." He stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the stars burned cold and distant. Somewhere out there, 800,000 waited to learn if they would have a future. "I am going to make you a promise," Sam said without turning around. "A promise on behalf of every human who ever lived because your people chose to be kind. We will find you a home, a real home, a world where your children can grow and your culture can survive. I do not know how we will do it, but we will." And made a sound that his translator could not identify. When she spoke, her voice was thick with something that might have been emotion. "You speak as if this is possible," she said. "But where would such a world come from? The conquered controls all habitable planets. They will not give one to us." Sam turned to face her. His eyes were bright. "Then we will make one ourselves," he said. "Humanity has been terraforming worlds for 200 years. We will terraform one for you. We will build you a home from nothing. And we will do it because you taught us something important long ago." "What did we teach you?" "That kindness does not need a reason," Sam said. "And that help given freely is the most powerful force in the universe." He walked to the door. Before he left, he looked back at the old elder one more time. "Tell your people to hold on," he said. "Tell them that humanity remembers. Tell them that we are coming." Then he was gone, walking fast toward the communication center, already composing the message he would send to Earth. The message that would start the largest cooperative effort in human history. Behind him, and sat alone in the quiet room. For the first time in many years, she allowed herself to feel something that she had thought was gone forever. Hope. The United Human Assembly had not seen a gathering like this in 50 years. Representatives from every colony, every station, every government under human control had come to Earth. They filled the great chamber in New Geneva, a room built to hold 10,000 people. Today, it held 15,000, with millions more watching from screens across human space. Sam stood at the central platform. He had not slept in 3 days. His suit was wrinkled and his eyes were red, but his voice was strong when he spoke. "You have all seen the evidence," he said. "You have all read the archives. 300 years ago, when we were dying, the Eye saved us. They gave everything they had. They asked for nothing. And now they are the ones who need help." The chamber was silent. Sam could feel the weight of attention pressing down on him. "The Conquered has given them 90 days," he continued. "After that, they will be scattered. Their culture will die. Their people will disappear into history unless we do something." He pressed a button on his console. A hologram appeared above him, showing a small moon orbiting a distant planet. The moon was gray and lifeless. Its surface was covered in craters and dust. "This is Leto Colony," Sam said. "It belongs to humanity. We have been mining it for 70 years. It has strategic value. It has economic value." He paused. "I am proposing that we give it up." Murmurs ran through the chamber. Some people shouted. Sam raised his hand for silence. "I am proposing that we terraform Leto Colony," he said. "That we reshape it into a world where the Eye can live. That we give it to them as a gift forever with full sovereignty. Their own planet. Their own home." The shouting grew louder. A representative from the Mars Federation stood up. "This is madness," she called out. "Terraforming takes decades. It costs trillions. We would have to relocate every worker on Leto Colony. We would lose one of our most valuable assets." "Yes," Sam said simply, "we would." "And for what?" the representative demanded. "For a species that most humans have never even heard of. For a debt that is 300 years old." Sam looked at her. His face was calm, but something burned behind his eyes. "Have you ever been hungry?" he asked. "Not just uncomfortable, truly hungry. The kind of hungry where your body starts to eat itself, where your children cry and you have nothing to give them." The representative did not answer. "Our ancestors knew that hunger," Sam said. 40 million of them were weeks away from death. They had no hope. They had been abandoned by every other species in the galaxy. And then ships came out of the darkness. Ships filled with food and medicine and kindness. Ships crewed by beings who looked like insects and spoke in clicks and had no reason to care about us at all. He pointed at the hologram of Leto Colony. "This moon is nothing compared to what they gave us," he said. "They gave us our future. They gave us our children. They gave us the chance to stand here today and argue about economics." His voice grew harder. "I think we can afford to give them a moon." The chamber erupted. People argued and shouted and waved their arms. The debate went on for hours, but something strange was happening outside the great chamber, something that no one had expected. People were volunteering. It started small. A group of terraforming engineers from the Luna colonies sent a message saying they would work for free. Then a medical team from the space station, Harmony, offered to relocate to Leto Colony and help establish hospitals. Then a farming collective from the outer planets pledged seeds and equipment. Within 24 hours, the messages numbered in the thousands. Within a week, they numbered in the millions. Ordinary humans from every corner of human space were stepping forward. They did not care about economics. They did not care about strategic value. They had heard the story of the Eye and they wanted to help. A starship captain named Danny Vega became the face of the movement. Danny was 63 years old, with gray hair and a scar across his jaw from an accident in his youth. His grandfather had survived the collapse wars. His grandmother had told him stories about the food ships that came from nowhere. Danny gave a speech at a rally in New Chicago. The crowd numbered over 100,000. "My grandfather was 6 years old when the food ran out on his colony," Danny said. "He told me he still remembered the taste of the ration cubes, dirt and desperation. That was all they had left." He looked out at the crowd. Many of them were crying. "Then the ships came," Danny continued. Strange ships with strange beings. They did not speak our language, they did not look like us, but they gave my grandfather food, real food, bread and fruit and meat, things he had never tasted before. Danny's voice grew rough. Those bugs saved my grandfather's life, he said. They saved millions of lives, and now they are asking for help and some people want to talk about costs. He shook his head. That is not who we are. That is not what humanity is supposed to be. The crowd roared. The sound was so loud that it could be heard blocks away. 3 days later, the United Human Assembly voted. The motion passed unanimously. Every single representative voted yes. Some of them were crying when they raised their hands. Humanity would terraform Leto Colony. Humanity would give the Eye a home. Humanity would pay a debt that was 300 years old. The news spread across human space and then beyond. The elder races watched in confusion. The conquered could not understand what was happening. Why would humans sacrifice so much for a dying species? Why would they give up valuable resources for beings who could offer nothing in return? But the humans understood, and that was all that mattered. On a refugee station at the edge of conquered space and watched the vote on a small screen. Her hands trembled. Around her, other eyes gathered, their dark eyes wide. They are really doing this, one of them said. They are really giving us a world. And could not speak. For the first time in her long life, she wept. The tears ran down her cracked shell and fell to the floor like tiny crystals. Somewhere in the distance, she could almost hear the sound of ships being prepared for launch. Ships that would carry hope across the stars. Ships that would prove that kindness, once given, is never truly forgotten. The first ships arrived at Leto Colony on a Tuesday. There were 17 of them, carrying engineers and equipment from the Luna Terraforming Corps. By Friday, there were over 200 ships in orbit. By the end of the month, the number had grown past 3,000. The Galactic Conquered had never seen anything like it. Their observers watched from a distance, trying to understand what was happening. A species was mobilizing its entire civilization to reshape a world, not for war, not for profit, for gratitude. Captain Danny Vega commanded the lead construction vessel, a massive ship called the Steadfast. From its bridge, he watched the fleets arrive. Cargo ships from Earth, medical frigates from Mars, agricultural transports from the outer colonies. Every ship carried volunteers. Every ship carried hope. The work began immediately. Terraforming a world usually took decades, sometimes longer, but humanity had decided that the Eye did not have decades. They had months. So the engineers looked at the old methods and threw them away. They invented new ones. They worked in ways that had never been tried before. Atmosphere processors were deployed by the thousands. Massive machines that pulled gases from the rock and turned them into breathable air. The machines worked day and night, their engines humming so loud that the vibrations could be felt on the surface. But the Eye did not breathe the same air as humans. Their bodies needed more humidity, more heat, different gases in different amounts. Human scientists studied Eye biology and adjusted every system accordingly. They were not building a human world. They were building an Eye world. A biologist named spent 3 weeks analyzing samples from the Eye, preserved in ancient archives. She found the genetic codes of plants that had grown there centuries ago, plants that the Eye had loved, plants that they thought were lost forever. And her team grew them in laboratories. Then they planted them on Leto Colony. The first seeds sprouted within days, pushing through the new soil toward artificial sunlight. When images of the young plants were sent to the Eye refugee stations, the response was overwhelming. I, who had never seen their ancestral flowers, wept at the sight. The human colonists on Leto Colony had to leave. Many of them had lived there for generations. They had built homes and raised families on that gray moon. Now they were being asked to give it all up. There was no resistance, not a single complaint. The colonists packed their belongings and boarded evacuation ships with smiles on their faces. One old miner named Jack Harper, who had worked on Lido Colony for 40 years, stopped at the edge of the landing pad before leaving. He looked back at the construction crews transforming his home. "Take good care of this place," he said to no one in particular. "It deserves to be loved." 18 months passed. The work continued without rest. Engineers rotated in shifts, sleeping in their ships and waking to continue building. Doctors treated injuries and exhaustion. Cooks prepared millions of meals. Accountants tracked supplies that flowed from every corner of human space. The cost was staggering, trillions of credits, more money than some planetary governments had ever seen. But the donations kept coming. Corporations gave until their profit margins turned negative. Ordinary citizens gave until their savings were empty. Children donated their allowances. Elderly people donated their pensions. A woman named, 92 years old and living on a retirement station near Jupiter, sent a message with her donation. It read, "My mother survived because of the food ships. She is gone now, but I remember her stories. Please use this money to say thank you. It is all I have, and I am honored to give it." The message was broadcast across human space. It became a symbol of what humanity was trying to do. Finally, the day came. Lido Colony was finished. It was no longer a gray, lifeless moon. It was alive. Green plants covered the surface. Blue water filled newly created lakes. The air was warm and humid, exactly as the eye needed. The sky had been tinted a soft orange, matching the sky of their lost. Humanity had not just built a colony, they had rebuilt a home. The eye arrived in waves. Their old refugee ships, held together with patches and prayers, landed on soil that had been prepared for them. The first to step onto the surface was En, the elder who had told Sam the truth about what her people had done. She walked slowly across the ground. Her feet touched grass that should not have existed. She breathed air that should not have been possible. Around her, other eye emerged from their ships, their dark eyes reflecting the orange sky. A human delegation waited nearby. Sam stood at the front, older now, his hair turning gray. Beside him stood Danny Vega and Vance and thousands of others who had made this day possible. And stopped a few feet away from Sam. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. "You have given us a world," and finally said. Her voice was barely a whisper. "You gave us our future," Sam replied. "This is nothing compared to that." "We did not help you to create a debt," and said. It was the same thing she had told him 2 years ago, in a forgotten room on Prime. Sam smiled. "And we did not do this to repay one. We did this because it was right, because your children deserve to live, because kindness does not need a reason." The elder made a sound that might have been laughter or crying or both. She reached out one of her 4 hands and touched Sam's arm. Her touch was light and warm. "What do you call this world?" she asked. "We have named it Nua," Sam said. "But it is yours now. You can call it whatever you wish." And looked around at the green hills and the orange sky and the water shining in the distance. She looked at the humans who had built all of this for her people. She looked at her own kind, finally standing on solid ground after so many years of drifting. "Nua," she said softly. "Yes, that is a good name." Behind her, a young child ran across the grass, laughing in clicks and chirps. It was the first time any had run freely on their own world in over a century. Sam watched the child play, and something inside him finally felt at peace. The debt was paid. The circle was complete. But this was not the end of the story. It was only the beginning. The galaxy had been built on short memories. The elder races had ruled for thousands of years by forgetting yesterday and planning for tomorrow. Alliances formed and broke like waves on a shore. Debts were forgiven when they became inconvenient. Kindness was given when it could be traded for something else. Humanity had broken all the rules. Word of what they had done for the spread across the conquered. Every species heard the story. A dying race had saved humanity centuries ago. Humanity had remembered. Humanity had repaid, not because they had to, not because it benefited them, simply because they believed it was right. The elder races did not know how to respond. Their diplomats studied the situation from every angle, looking for the trick, the hidden motive, the secret advantage. They found nothing. The humans had genuinely given away a world for the sake of gratitude. Some of the elders laughed. They called humanity naive, sentimental, foolish. A species that would sacrifice strategic assets for emotional reasons would never survive in the long competition of civilizations. But other species watched with different eyes. They were a small people, not much larger than human children. They had once been explorers, famous for mapping unknown regions of space. Then a larger species had conquered there and reduced them to servants. For 200 years they had lived under occupation, their dreams forgotten. A elder named approached the human embassy on the station Prime. He was old and his fur patchy from years of hard labor. He carried a data chip in his small hands. "We have information," he told Ambassador Sam. "Maps of regions that no other species has visited. We kept them hidden from our masters. They are the last treasure of our people." Sam looked at the data chip. "Why are you giving this to us?" His dark eyes were steady. "Because you remembered the eye," he said. "Because you proved that loyalty means something. We want allies who will not forget us when we are no longer useful." It was the first of many such meetings. There came next a species of aquatic beings whose ocean world had been polluted by corporate mining. They had been fighting legal battles in conquered courts for decades, always losing. They asked humanity for help. Then came the whose ancient library had been stolen by raiders a century ago. They wanted someone to help them find it. They came to humanity. Then a dozen other species, small and forgotten and desperate. They came because they had heard what humanity did for the eye. They came because they believed in loyalty. Humanity said yes to all of them. The elder races grew nervous. They watched as humanity built a network of alliances that was not based on power or economics. It was based on something they did not understand: trust, gratitude, memory. These were not things that could be bought or traded. They could only be earned. Years passed. New flourished. The eye population grew. Children who had been born on refugee stations grew up under an orange sky, running through fields of ancestral flowers. They learned their language and their history and their culture. The eye were no longer a dying species. They were a living one. Sam retired from diplomatic service at the age of 71. He had spent his entire career building bridges between humanity and the forgotten species of the galaxy. He had made enemies among the powerful and friends among the weak. He had never regretted any of it. On the anniversary of the gift, the day humanity had officially transferred Nua to the Eye, there was always a festival. Eye and humans celebrated together, sharing food and music and stories. It was a reminder of what two species could achieve when they chose kindness over convenience. Sam attended the festival in his 80th year. He walked slowly now, his body failing him in all the ways that bodies do, but his mind was sharp and his heart was full. The celebration was held in the central plaza of the first Eye City. Thousands of beings filled the streets. Eye danced in patterns that their ancestors had invented before humans learned to use fire. Human children ran among them, laughing and trying to copy the movements. A young Eye approached Sam as he sat on a bench watching the dancers. The young one was barely out of childhood, with a smooth shell and bright, curious eyes. "You are Sam," the young Eye said. It was not a question. "I am," Sam replied. "My name is," the young one said. "My grandmother told me about you. She said you were the human who started everything." Sam smiled and shook his head. "I did not start anything. Your ancestors started it 300 years ago when they chose to help strangers who were dying." sat down beside him. They watched the festival together in silence for a while. "Can I ask you something?" finally said. "Of course." "Why did humans do this?" the young eye asked. "Your species gave up so much. You could have ignored us like everyone else. Why did you remember?" Sam thought about the question for a long time. He thought about his grandmother's stories. He thought about letters written by a girl named Grace on a colony called Haven's Rest. He thought about all the people who had given their time and money and hope to build a world for strangers. "Someone was kind to us once," Sam said slowly. "When we had nothing, when we were dying, someone helped us for no reason except that it was right." He looked at the young eye. "The least we could do was pass it on." Was quiet. Then he nodded as if something had become clear. "I think I understand," he said. Years later, long after Sam was gone, a cargo ship crewed by Eye was traveling through a distant region of space. They received a distress signal from a planet they had never visited. A species they had never met was suffering. Their crops had failed. Their people were starving. The captain of the cargo ship was named. He was old now, his shell cracked like Anne's had been. He looked at the distress signal and made a decision without hesitation. "Change course," he ordered. "Prepare all food supplies for transfer." His crew obeyed. As they approached the dying world, one of the younger crew members asked the captain why they were doing this. They had no alliance with these beings, no treaty, no obligation. Thought of an old human sitting on a bench at a festival, telling him about kindness that did not need a reason. "Open a channel," said. "Send them this message." The message was simple. It said, "We are the Eye, we have come to help. Someone taught us long ago what kindness looks like. We remember, and now so will you." The cargo ship descended toward the starving world, carrying food and hope and the echo of a debt that had been repaid across 300 years. The cycle continued. The kindness spread. And somewhere in the vast darkness between the stars, humanity smiled.